The lights in the office always came on the same way. One flicker, then a soft hum, like the building itself was clearing its throat. Most people found it eerie, that stillness before the chaos of the day. I liked it. That silence was mine. By 6 a.m., I had my coffee in hand, blinds cracked just enough to let the skyline bleed in, and my second monitor already pulling up the early cycle reports. The ritual never changed, not out of superstition, but discipline. Patterns keep you sharp, and when you're the only one on the floor who remembers how things used to be, before automation, before influencers, before everything became a goddamn hashtag, discipline is all you have left. I'm Michael Trent, 54 years old, Executive Director of Enterprise Accounts at Titan Forge Strategies. For the past 19 years, I've run the client acquisition and revenue optimization program for our B2B portfolio. I've closed more than $80 million in high-value contracts, personally brought in over $3 million annually through my channel model, and trained half the regional directors still on payroll. When the 2008 collapse gutted the industry, I didn't just survive, I built the damn bridge that carried us out. Not by chasing trends, by building systems that worked. That morning was supposed to be like any other. My team had hit their quarterly targets a full month ahead of schedule. I had a pipeline report ready to show the board that projected 14% year-over-year growth. My calendar was clear until 9:30. That's when Connor Blake knocked on my glass door and stepped in without waiting. He wore that same smug half-smile he always did, like he knew something no one else did. 28, maybe 29. Stanford MBA, magna cum laude. 3 years in tech startups before landing a strategic transformation role here last fall. Said all the right words in all the right rooms. Agile vertical integration, AI-led pivot strategy, brand elasticity. The kind of guy who turns a quarterly meeting into a TED Talk and thinks it's leadership. "Mike," he said, smoothing his suit as he sat down across from me. "We need to talk about direction." I didn't blink, just took a slow sip of my coffee and waited. He launched into a monologue, consultant speak dressed up as insight. Something about the need to modernize outreach flows, synergize digital pipelines, flatten the legacy revenue stack. It was the kind of pitch that sounds impressive if you don't ask questions. I'd heard it before. I'd heard it from him, in fact, 6 weeks ago, when he floated the idea of replacing our senior accounts team with a CRM plugin and a Slack bot. I let him finish. Then I asked, "You want me to consult on the rollout?" He smiled wider, and that's when I saw it. The folder. Tan. Unlabeled. He opened it and slid the papers across the desk like he was handing me a dry cleaning bill. "Your approach is great. For an old-school business," he said, eyes on the edge of his polished watch, not even meeting mine. "But the company needs modern strategies now." I glanced down at the termination letter. Effective immediately. Severance package pre-calculated. HR contact information included. For a long second, I didn't move, just studied his posture, the way he leaned back in the chair, hands folded like a smug little prince. He thought this was the future walking out the past, that he was the evolution, and I was the fossil. I stood slowly, buttoned my jacket, shook his hand. "Good luck, Connor," I said. "You'll need it." He blinked, surprised by my calm. I walked out without another word, past the open plan bullpen, the kitchen, the framed vision statement on the wall that still quoted a line I'd written 10 years ago. No one looked up. No one knew yet. That was fine. Let him have his moment. I didn't drive home. I didn't call anyone. I went straight to the third-floor storage unit I'd kept under my consulting LLC. Opened the laptop inside. Punched in the encrypted passphrase. Every client profile I'd ever touched was there. Every conversion flow, every outreach sequence, every performance model I'd ever built. Saved, updated, archived. Not stolen. Just backed up. Just in case. Because you don't spend 19 years building a machine without making sure you know how to rebuild it. And you don't hand your kingdom to a boy with buzzwords just because he brought his own ring light. They thought they'd fired a dinosaur. What they didn't know was that I taught myself to hunt alone long before they were born. I didn't plan to survive the 2008 collapse. I planned to outlast it. When the bottom fell out, when clients ghosted and competitors folded like wet cardboard, I was already moving. Not because I was smarter, because I'd seen what panic does to men who think they're invincible. I'd seen it in my father, a regional sales director, who watched his pension vanish in a week. I'd seen it in colleagues who thought seniority was a moat. So I built the only thing I knew how to build: predictability, systems, pipelines, cold, clean logic. At Titan Forge, I started with nothing but a few lukewarm leads and a stack of rejected contracts. I built a client acquisition model that didn't rely on charm or charisma. It relied on pressure points, timing, follow-through, market read intercepts. While others were chasing contacts, I was mapping behaviors. By 2010, my model had restored 60% of our churned revenue. By 2012, I'd turned the entire East Coast sales framework into a self-sustaining engine. They gave me an office with a view. I gave them consistent compounding profit, and I didn't just keep it for myself. I mentored the next wave: bright-eyed interns, junior analysts, new hires with no compass. I taught them how to read client fatigue in an email signature, how to spot when a CEO was about to jump ship based on how his assistant changed her phrasing. I handed them everything, trusted them with the architecture. When I was walked out by Connor Blake, not one of them called. A few days after the firing, I logged into the system from one of my backups, an interface I'd designed years ago as a diagnostic tool, disguised inside the legacy admin panel. It wasn't connected to my user account. It didn't raise alerts. It was invisible unless you knew the keystroke sequence and the shell routing protocol. They didn't. Connor certainly didn't. He probably had someone else do his password resets. The failsafe gave me partial access: client behavioral data, CRM engagement logs, flag triggers. I couldn't manipulate anything, but I could see enough. The first thing I noticed was a shift in tone. Outreach emails were going out without context, stripped of nuance, templates instead of strategy. A client I'd personally onboarded 4 years ago, $800,000 annual contract, was now listed as unresponsive. I checked the sequence. 4 automated follow-ups in 3 days. No adjustment, no human correction. Just spam. That client didn't ghost. He got insulted. Across the board, response rates were tanking. Account velocity dropped 38% in 6 weeks. A quiet bleed, one the quarterly report would mask, until it didn't. And still the board said nothing. I watched the meeting logs from the ops calendar. Connor had pitched them again, this time with an outside consultant from a media group in Miami. AI-led content strategy, influencer outreach partnerships, brand synergy with a crypto logistics firm based in Singapore. None of it matched our core competencies, but the board loved the words. Disruption, they wrote, modernization. One even called it visionary. The deeper betrayal wasn't Connor. He was just a symptom. The betrayal came from the ones I trained, the ones who had once sat in my office late into the night, asking for help on their decks, worrying about their numbers. Now they nodded along, smiled, took notes. One of them, Julie Madsen, who used to cry in my office over client churn, laughed when Connor said my systems were legacy scaffolding. Survival, she told someone in the break room, thinking no one was listening. It's just business. I didn't rage. I didn't call her. I didn't storm the building or send angry emails. I wrote her name on a note card and slipped it into the back of my folder. Then I listened, watched, gathered. I spent a week reviewing my old accounts, the ones still listed in their CRM, the ones showing signs of fatigue. I knew the language they responded to, knew their decision cycles, their pain points, their hesitations. I spun up 3 burner personas, 1 technical consultant, 1 growth strategist, 1 boutique partner, each with a different voice, a different value prop, all roads leading to the same place. Me. The first email was simple. We noticed your recent partner engagement may no longer be aligned with your Q4 goals. We'd love to show you what a modern system really looks like. One designed by someone who's been in your seat. Sent under alias. VPN routed. Untraceable. Within 6 hours, I got a reply. By the end of the week, 6 more accounts responded. 4 asked for proposals. 1 requested a demo. None of them knew it was me behind the curtain. I wasn't trying to steal clients. I was trying to remind them what competence felt like. They were about to learn that relevance isn't something you inherit. It's something you survive. The aisles of the data center stretched out like cathedral hallways, rows of humming servers flickering with pulse light. The only sound a low electrical murmur, calm, constant, like bees trapped in glass. It was cold, dry, sterile, the kind of place where time didn't pass, only packets. I used to come here late at night when I needed to think. No phones, no distractions, just the hum of continuity. Machines don't lie. They don't flatter. They don't pretend to understand quarterly projections or internal politics. They just run. Until they don't. I walked past the racks like I had 100 times before. Still had the badge. Old clearance. They'd never revoked it. Oversight, maybe. Or maybe no one thought I'd bother coming back. That was the trick with ghosts. You stop seeing them, and eventually, you stop believing they were ever there. The first client left on a Tuesday. Quiet. No complaints, no escalations, just a polite contract termination and a single line. We've decided to move in another direction. I watched the timestamp, knew the contact, knew the exact reason. We'd spoken, my proxy and I, 3 weeks earlier. Offered cleaner deliverables, tighter analytics, better human touchpoints. No upsells, no AI noise, no influencer kits mailed to their reception desk like party favors. Just results. The kind they remembered. The kind they trusted. Within 10 days, 3 more followed. Then 6. Then 9. Not all were mine, but the top ones were. The legacy clients. The foundation of Titan Forge's retention model. The ones who didn't care about buzzwords, only performance. Connor noticed by the second wave. His Slack messages changed tone. Shorter, sharper. He blamed marketing, then sales, then outdated system integrations. I watched him pace in circles through the conference room on a live feed. Someone left unsecured. Jacket off, tie loosened. Hands in the air, stabbing at a whiteboard like it had betrayed him too. He told the board it was a seasonal dip, said it was a result of old account managers not embracing the new tools. He recommended staff refreshment across 2 regions. They approved the budget. He cut 3 VPs and reassigned their teams to junior analysts who knew how to post on TikTok. Meanwhile, the clients kept walking. The system I'd built, off-grid, offshore, under a name no one could link back to me, was absorbing the load like it was nothing. My fake CEO was a 62-year-old ex-McKinsey exec with a convincing accent and a LinkedIn trail 3 layers deep. We'd bought his profile from a data broker, polished it, filled in the blanks. My emails came from him. My follow-ups came from his team. My demos were pre-recorded, high gloss, buzzword light, results heavy. They landed because they felt real. I never used my name, never even hinted. Clients didn't care. They just wanted competence again. When the 7th top-tier account left TitanForge in under 30 days, the board sent in a forensic auditor, external, independent. She came in quiet, wore gray suits and no perfume, carried a tablet everywhere. I watched her run cycles on billing discrepancies and campaign attribution. She found inconsistencies, funnel misfires, lead rot in the CRM, but nothing illegal, nothing overt. She circled around the core, but she never reached the flame. Connor's tone changed again. Emails grew longer, desperate. He pushed new initiatives, affiliate deals, influencer live streams, a podcast about growth culture. The board nodded politely but started asking questions. His answers got shorter again. He never saw the shape forming around him, the invisible circle closing inch by inch. One night, I intercepted a packet meant for the board's internal discussion channel, encrypted, but not elegantly. Connor's name in the subject line. I cracked it in under 10 minutes. His message was short. We may be compromised. That was the closest he ever got to admitting he'd lost control. They scrambled after that. Emergency strategy sessions, outside consultants, weekend retreats with whiteboards and cold brew. Nothing worked. The bleed had become a flow, and the flow was becoming a flood. They didn't know where the leak was coming from. That's because I was never in the building to begin with. It started with a single post on an obscure industry forum, buried 3 threads deep in a thread about marketing automation drift. A user, brand new, no history, registered from a masked IP, asked if anyone had noticed inconsistencies in Valance's Q3 lead attribution report. No accusations, no outrage, just curiosity. That's how you start a whisper campaign. Not with thunder, but with static. I'd been watching Valance closely for weeks, skimming their white papers, analyzing traffic patterns, cross-referencing public case studies with internal data I'd backed up before they locked me out. The numbers didn't align, not just sloppy reporting, intentional stitching. Connor had been inflating performance metrics by rolling failed campaign traffic into unrelated funnel results. It looked impressive if you didn't zoom in, but if you traced the original source data, you saw the same 12 junk leads dressed in different metadata. I left the second breadcrumb 2 days later, a reply, framed as a competitor's frustration. We tried to replicate Valance's engagement benchmarks and couldn't get close. Anyone else? Another anonymous account, another VPN bounce. By the end of the week, 4 more users had joined the thread. 2 of them were real. The momentum was organic now. That's all it needed. The journalist found me on day 11. Her email was brief, cautious. A burner account. No signature. Saw your comments on the Funnel Sleuth thread. We've been hearing similar things. Would you be willing to chat? Off record, off platform. No attribution. She signed it. Interested in the truth. I never gave her my name. I never even responded directly. But I created a Dropbox link with a single PDF. An annotated Valance pitch deck with timestamps highlighting all the false benchmarks, followed by the original datasets they were pulled from, all scrubbed, all clean. I dropped the link into the same forum thread with a vague caption, "Might be of interest." She downloaded it within 4 minutes. 3 days later, an article appeared on Medium under an independent tech publication. Inside the numbers, Are Valence's growth metrics too good to be true? It didn't accuse. It asked questions, but the questions were sharp enough to bleed. Connor tried to ignore it at first, said nothing publicly. But behind closed doors, his tone shifted again. He scheduled emergency alignment meetings, pulled the PR team off 2 product launches to do reputation assurance. One board member asked him to explain the discrepancies. He gave them a chart. It didn't answer the question, but he still had one move left: the merger announcement. Valence had been quietly negotiating with a mid-tier data visualization firm out of Austin. Connor planned to unveil it at the Elevate Tech Summit. Big stage, flashy lights, glossy presentation to wash the dirt off his name. A new chapter, new partners, forward momentum. He never saw the trap until he was already inside it. The demo platform they used at Elevate Tech ran on a proprietary sandboxed cloud system. I'd spent 3 weeks scraping the API logs from a beta test user account I'd registered under a dummy partner firm. Found vulnerabilities in the render module. Nothing malicious, just weak error handling. If the metadata structure on the JSON payload exceeded a certain length with duplicate keys, it wouldn't crash the system. It would stall the rendering queue indefinitely. On the day of the summit, while Connor stood in the wings backstage rehearsing his lines, I uploaded 2 corrupted data files into the demo pipeline through the back door. Then, I waited. The intro music rolled, spotlights swept the crowd. Connor walked out in a slate blue suit, smiling like a game show host. The title slide appeared behind him, Data Without Limits. He tapped the clicker. Nothing happened. He smiled again. Clicked twice. The screen jittered, then froze. Little technical hiccup. He laughed, waving to the booth. Let's go to slide 2. It went black, then white, then back to black. Live feed viewers started commenting, some laughing, some confused. In the front row, 2 board members leaned toward each other, whispering. A few phones came out. Someone tweeted a screenshot with the caption, #DataWithoutSlides. Connor stammered, tried to recover, went off script, quoted stats no one could verify, reached for jokes that didn't land. The auditorium, once filled with quiet admiration, started to smell like blood in the water. The live stream was pulled down after 12 minutes. The Twitter thread hit trending by dinner time. That same journalist posted a follow-up article titled, "Is Valence Overpromising and Underbuilding?" This one had sources, quotes, internal contradictions. I sat in my living room, lights off, watching the fallout flicker across 6 screens. Slack leaks, partner hesitation, #campaigns turning sour. I wasn't just rewriting the narrative, I was deleting the backups. The dossier was 83 pages long, including annexes. No padding, no fluff. Just clean, lethal documentation, emails with altered timestamps, investor decks with doctored metrics, Slack transcripts where Connor told a junior analyst to round up and make it pretty. I didn't editorialize. I didn't need to. I let the facts sharpen their own knives. At 9 a.m. Eastern, it hit 3 destinations at once. 1. The regulatory body overseeing fair disclosure compliance. 2. A short list of journalists who'd been circling the story for weeks, noses already full of smoke, waiting for a spark. 3. The boardroom inbox of Titan Forge Strategies, addressed to each member by name. By 9:12, the first calls were being made. The journalists moved fast, too fast for legal to muzzle. The regulators sent an inquiry, and inside the Titan Forge Slack, panic bloomed like black mold. I watched from a distance, still connected through a silent gateway buried inside a forgotten contractor account, tied to a dormant analytics license. One of those things no one bothers revoking. The initial response was denial. Connor stood in front of the board and claimed sabotage, said the files were forged, said someone had it out for him. But one of the annexes included a video, a screen recording of him editing a Q3 slide deck at 2:14 a.m., with the track changes still visible. Another showed him forwarding privileged client data to an offshore marketing agency that didn't exist before last quarter, a shell company created through a trail of crypto conversions that looked legitimate if you didn't look hard. But someone looked hard. By noon, 2 senior partners resigned, not with statements, just silence. One cleared his desk and walked out while Connor was still in the middle of a call. The share price took its first dive at 117. By 2:03, the news was on every tech bulletin, and Titan Forge's PR team was issuing a generic internal investigation underway statement that only made things worse. At 3:46, Connor Blake was removed from the company directory. No announcement, just erased. Mid-quarter, mid-cycle, no golden parachute, just a flat fall into the space between headlines and subpoenas. They didn't even let him gather his things. HR boxed it up, walked it out past a hallway of glass offices, most of them now filled with people who couldn't even look up. Modern strategy became a punchline by the next morning. Interns were whispering it in the kitchen, smirking as they poured their coffees. The client exodus accelerated. Those who hadn't already left saw the blood in the water and bailed without blinking. One of them, a partner that had accounted for nearly 14% of Titan Forge's Q1 revenue, posted publicly that they had lost confidence in the firm's ability to operate with transparency. No one blamed me. No one even knew to look in my direction. Because when ghosts strike, they don't leave fingerprints. Just empty chairs and questions no one wants to ask out loud. I didn't gloat. I didn't celebrate. I just logged out of the backdoor system for the last time, powered down the burner, and slid it into a drawer I wouldn't reopen. That part of me, Michael Trent, Director of Enterprise Accounts, was done. At 7:08 that evening, I walked into a new office. Not a borrowed one. Not a shell. Mine. Real name on the glass. Real company built from the bones of the old. My firm had already absorbed 8 former clients from Titan Forge and signed 3 more within the past month. No ad campaigns, no keynote speeches, just quiet competence and results that didn't need embellishment. The front desk greeted me with a nod. No fanfare, just respect. I stepped onto the floor, the sound of my shoes echoing against polished wood, the same stillness I used to savor before anyone else arrived. Only this time, I owned the silence. I passed the rows of desks, the soft hum of focused work filling the air. No distractions, no slogans, just professionals doing what they were hired to do. In my office, top corner, natural light bleeding across the steel frame, I sat down, opened my notebook, and wrote a single line. Relevance isn't about being loud. It's about being last. The words sat there, clean and final, like a seal pressed into wax. They called me obsolete, but I outlived them. Outside, the sky began to dim. The city below flickered to life, unaware that something had shifted, that one game had ended and another had quietly begun. I stood and walked the length of the office one last time, the same way I had in the old building, back when I was just part of someone else's machine. Now, the floor beneath me didn't belong to a system. It was the system, one built without buzzwords or borrowed time. And I thought about how betrayal always dresses itself in new clothes. In Roman courts, it wore togas and ink. In boardrooms, it wears pocket squares and borrowed vision. But the shape doesn't change. It always smiles while it cuts, always thinks it's the first to do so. But revenge doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need to bleed. It waits. It listens behind glass walls, watches the new generation dismiss the old, lets them laugh, lets them rise. And then, when the time is right, it reaches forward, quiet, clinical, and exact. Betrayal isn't new. From kingdoms to cubicles, it wears a different mask each generation. The tools change, but the game never does. And revenge? It's not about rage, it's about patience. The kind that waits behind glass walls, smiles in the face of arrogance, and knows exactly when to strike.